We were disappointed to find that the meeting attracted more than 350 participants, provided little to no time or opportunity for a real discussion on the adequacy of Disney's assessment. Our goal with these extended sessions is to facilitate a full, open discussion of the EIA, its deficiencies, gaps, and how Disney might address them. I want to take a minute to lay out the ground rules for our Zoom meeting. First, in Zoom, if your real name doesn't show, please rename yourself by pressing the participants button, hitting more next to your name, and select rename. Second, we will mute everyone's video and audio except for the speakers in order to assure adequate bandwidth. Third, please feel free to use the chat function. We will start with a brief presentation from independent experts outlining their analysis of the adequacy of Disney's EIA. We will then proceed with an open discussion period. We encourage you to share your thoughts and questions on the adequacy of the EIA, and we will do our best to give everyone who wishes a chance to speak. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise your hand feature I just mentioned, and you will be called on. I am pleased to introduce Mark Yagi, the Executive Director of Waterkeeper Alliance and a partner in the Stop Disney Last Chance campaign, who will be moderating our discussion tonight. Mark? Mark?
I'm just unmuting him.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much, Sam. And good evening, everyone. As Sam said, I'm Mark Yagi, Executive Director of Waterkeeper Alliance, which is made up of more than 350 waterkeepers in more than 45 countries, including the Bahamas. At the invitation of our Bahamian waterkeepers and other partners, we have been actively participating with the Last Chance for Lighthouse Point campaign for almost 2 years. I was privileged to visit Lighthouse Point last year and to meet with many Eleutherians who clearly felt even that their voice and concerns were not being heard. Some have recently suggested that we are coming in at the last minute to disparage the project and disrupt the process. But the reality is that Disney has rebuffed our repeated requests over the last 2 years for meetings, including with our independent experts, to discuss the planned content of the environmental impact assessment, which is a normal practice for environmental reviews. You can take a look at the record of our interactions with Disney at the website stopdisney.com. More recently, Disney handpicked a few environmental groups to brief about the environmental impact assessment in advance of its release. We had no knowledge of the content of the EIA until the public release of the EIA on March 10th. Now, Disney has stated that their intent is to approach the Lighthouse Point project with the same level of environmental stewardship and sensitivity it brings to other Disney projects around the world. And also, we believe that as an iconic American company that's proposing a development primarily for Americans, Disney would follow the same standards in the Bahamas as it does for proposed developments in Florida, California, or elsewhere. This project is a major decision for the future of Eleuthera and the Bahamas. Our campaign petition has attracted more than 440,000 supporters, so the world is watching this process. And we believe Disney when it says it will not proceed with the development unless it is environmentally responsible. As my friend Kajarina McKinney said at the official consultation on April 8th, irrespective of your view of Disney's current proposal, we can agree that Disney and the government need to conduct a science-based environmental impact assessment with meaningful public participation as a basis for a rational decision about such a major project. Our goal with these extended public consultations is to further the discussion of the key areas where the EIA needs to be improved so that Disney, the government, and the public can make a sound judgment about the future of Lighthouse Point. This Monday, we invited the government and Disney experts to participate. Disney has refused to participate, and we have received no response just so far from the government. If there are any Disney or government associates here, I hope they will identify themselves in the chat. We welcome you, and we hope you will engage in a productive discussion with us tonight. Now we're going to start off the conversation this evening with presentations from two outstanding independent experts on their own analyses of Disney's environmental impact assessment. Tonight here with us, we have Dinah Baer, former General Counsel at the U.S. President's Council on Environmental Quality, and Dr. Gregory Miller, the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Travel, or also known as CREST in Washington, D.C. To start off, I'm pleased to introduce Dinah Baer. Ms. Baer served as General Counsel at the President's Council on Environmental Quality in the Executive Office of the U.S. President for 24 years. She is a leading international expert on environmental impact assessments and the environmental review process. Dinah's bio and her review of the EIA are being posted in the chat. So for now, please welcome Dinah Baer.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and greetings to everyone. I'm going to briefly outline 8 major problems with the document that's labeled Environmental Impact Assessment for Disney Cruise Line's proposal for Lighthouse Point. But before I do, one personal note. I grew up 15 miles from Disneyland, from the original Disneyland. I love the place, and I love the nature films that they produced. The company has done some good things, and it's really sad to see the state that this document is in. But if any company should know about happy endings, it's Disney. And so I really do hope that they listen to the public and step back and think about what they're doing here much more seriously than I'm afraid they have to date. I'm going to start off with the purpose of environmental impact assessment because this document reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of what environmental impact assessment is about. It's not an evaluation of the environmental impacts of a decision that's already been made with maybe a little mitigation suggested. What it's supposed to be is an evaluation of the environmental and related social and economic impacts and alternatives to the proposal in a way that actually informs the decision-making. As it stands now, this document, in my professional judgment, does not conform to international and United States standards for environmental impact assessment. Alternatives. Everybody thinks about alternatives when they make personal or professional decisions. And in fact, Disney has said that they considered some alternative sites. But this isn't a private decision. It's a public decision that's going to affect the community, communities in Eleuthera, the wildlife, the environment of the island for many, many years, possibly centuries. The EIA needs to identify both location alternatives and project alternatives, including alternatives that are reasonable alternatives that are suggested by members of the public and public interest groups. Alternatives are a required part of environmental impact assessment in at least 2 international conventions to which the Bahamas is a signatory. The Ramsar Convention on the Protection of Wetlands and the Convention on Biological Diversity. It's also in the 2020 Bahamian EIA procedures. Scope of analysis. The preponderance of effects of analysis and mitigation measures in this document focuses on construction. And those impacts are important, but I suspect that the more long-lasting impacts will be the recreating and presence of thousands of people each week, millions each year on the island, and the support systems, whether waste disposal, transportation, power, et cetera, that is needed to keep the project as it's currently designed in operation. That analysis is woefully lacking. Cumulative effects analysis. The EIA, one of the most important analytical parts of an environmental impact assessment, is looking not only at the impacts of the proposed action, here both construction and operation, but the impacts of other things that are happening at the same time or in the foreseeable future, and how those impacts together synergistically will affect the resources of the island. One thing we know is happening now, and is certainly going to be happening in the future, is climate change. And this EIA is devoid of any discussion about how the project will impact climate change, and very importantly, the effects of climate change on the project and on this environment, including sea level rise. Missing baseline data. The document has a lot of pages on baseline data, but there's some amazingly important gaps. Do we really not know if sea turtles nest on these beaches? What are the migration patterns of bonefish, and how will that be affected? Are there coral reefs within the project footprint? How will the communities of the island be affected? There's 3 short paragraphs simply describing where the island is and the number of people that live there. That's not satisfactory at all. Then there's the studies that have been done but haven't been released to the public. For example, Appendix H of the EIA shows tables and charts from an economic study, but the economic study itself isn't there. Why not? I'm concerned that the study may just show positive impacts, or maybe it does show negative impacts, and that's why they don't want to show it. We don't know because they haven't made it public. The analysis of the effects is very superficial, if it exists at all. And I think the next speaker is going to be going into more detail, but I'll just give one little example. The road that currently leads from the rest of the island into the project area currently requires high clearance vehicles. That would be transformed into a road that accommodates 15,000 vehicles a day. The entire sum and substance of the analysis of effects is greater mobility. There's not a word on the impacts of the dry broadleaf evergreen forest that the road cuts through, nothing at all. And there's also not any mention that I saw of medical facilities on the island, which seems a little odd given the time period that we're in right now. Mitigation suggestions. The document promises much in the way of mitigation, but it doesn't commit to very much at all. There's a lot of suggestions, there's a lot of options, there's talk about an environmental management plan and adaptive management, all good techniques. But the EIA doesn't provide the analytical foundation to actually use those tools moving forward. And we really don't know what mitigation they're going to implement and what the effects of that mitigation will be. This is a very disappointing show by such an iconic American company that has long been identified with nature. The document is more public relations than analysis, more PR than anything else, but it's bad PR. As Mark already said, the Disney company has said it would use the same standards as it does anywhere around the world. I can say with absolute confidence that this document would never be released by Disney in California, where they started. Never, ever. I strongly recommend that they revise it or supplement it after listening to everyone's comments. Thank you.
Dinah, thank you so much for your thoughtful and thorough review. That was great. Thank you so much. And next up, we have Dr. Gregory Miller, the Executive Director of the Center for Responsible Travel, or CREST. For nearly 2 decades, CREST has provided objective and unbiased guidance for sustainable tourists. They have set standards for responsible tourism policies and practices on a global scale so that local communities may thrive and steward their cultural resources and biodiversity. Dr. Miller's bio and review are being posted in the chat, so please welcome Gregory Miller.
Right, thank you so much, Mark. And Dinah, I grew up also under the shadow of the original Disneyland in Southern California. Probably we may have been neighbors, who knows? Yes. So I have a strong hit. Can you see my screen okay? Because I will be using some few slides. I really appreciate that. And one thing I want to point out is there will be several observations that I will make in these few short minutes that will very much coincide with what Dinah has stated. But I want to underscore that I've heard what Dinah has presented for the first time right now. I did not see or understand what she was going to say. So we are truly looking at this 100% from an independent and technically robust manner. So you've heard who I am and what my organization is. I just want to underscore one thing, and that's CREST, as we've been around almost 20 years, it's very important to underscore that we have considerable experience, both analytical, technical, and field throughout the Americas, specifically in the Caribbean. And we have for many years looked at in great detail at the environmental, social, and economic impacts of cruise tourism. I put some of the publications that we've had at CREST up here, just so you can see. If you go to responsibletravel.org, you can access all of these. I just want to underscore that we have deep underpinnings in this area, and I want to thank the Last Chance for Lighthouse Point campaign for reaching out to us to undertake the independent review. I understand that that will be posted on the chat, so you can see my briefer comments will be fleshed out in more detail. I want to underscore several things as a result of our independent review of the draft Lighthouse Point EIA. First thing is the EIA is flawed. I totally concur with Dinah. This does not meet international standards for sustainable tourism and destination stewardship, and to me is inconsistent with Disney's global brand. At one point and several points in the EIA, there is reference to best management practices, that they'll be outlined in the environmental management plan. But as has already been noted, no such draft EMP is provided to the public. And it's our opinion that without an EMP, it is impossible to assess Disney's proposed mitigation plans or determine if sustainable tourism, biodiversity, and cultural resources best management practices are even being considered. I want to also underscore that the EMP needs to be developed prior to any decision making. This is essential. And that EMP needs rigorous best management practices that meet global destination stewardship criteria to address visitor distribution, coastal and reef protection, wildlife monitoring, renewable energy, overfishing, water and air pollution, and waste management. As Dinah had noted, there was cursory mention to these, but nothing close to what an acceptable EIA would have. Another element, and this is an area that CREST, we really zeroed in on, as you would expect, as the Center for Responsible Travel, is that virtually all proposed tourist activities represent unsustainable tourism options that lack innovation and do not represent a future-thinking, sustainable tourism destination model. In addition, the EIA does not make the case for narrowing the wealth gap and improving well-being and economic benefit of local communities. As part of that, we see that there is a genuine risk of economic leakage, meaning that most of the economic benefits received through the project would actually be received outside of Eleuthera and the Bahamas. That is a significant shortcoming. When we look at the alternatives or the lack of alternative options, and Dinah had focused on this as well, I want to underscore that from CREST's perspective, the EIA does not adequately explain the process, criteria, or overall results of the alternative location analysis. There's consideration of alternative plans was in fact an explicit requirement in the final draft of the 2020 EIA regulations. But when, on what was it, April 8th, when Disney presented their plans, they used, and it's up on the upper left of those three figures, this was their analysis of alternatives, and that to the far left is an alternative that isn't even an option for Disney. It is not something that they would even consider, and yet it was used as an alternative option, and it's a false choice, frankly, for Disney in this, and it should not have even been presented. Disney should be guided by global best destination selection and management practices and re-examine alternative options, including a more altered or degraded location, a land-based low impact option, and a no development option, none of which was presented. For us at CREST, the biggest issue here is that the EIA virtually ignores the impact of the 640,000 to 1 million tourists a year who are projected in this plan. The EIA ignores the negative environmental impacts of upwards to 20,000 weekly visitors that are projected on wildlife and ecological integrity of Lighthouse Point and the surrounding marine areas. The impacts are multiple, and you can see those listed here. I won't read them all, but poor visitor dispersal, toxicity from sunscreen. It's a full buffet of negative environmental and social impacts there. The EIA also dismisses the long-term negative impacts on marine species and ecological integrity of the marine environment. And the EIA in many places presents unsubstantiated claims that the project will have no impact on land or marine diversity. And we were frankly shocked by the false headline that was presented, I believe in early March in a media article, where it states, and I quote, the EIA shows no loss of biodiversity expected for Disney Cruise Line proposed LHP project. This is a false statement and it needs to be challenged. In addition, there is no established carrying capacity baseline for Lighthouse Point, and the draft EIA does not present the full picture of project impacts from design, construction, to proposed site operations, nor the long-term impacts of climate change on the proposed project footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. In looking at this, we have the following recommendations from the Center for Responsible Travel's perspective. We recommend that there should be an immediate strategic pause undertaken with public dissemination of all economic study data, significant revision of the EIA with alternatives, and then an environmental management plan prepared, all of which would need to be presented for public review prior to any decision making by Disney or the Bahamian government. Disney should commit to the establishment and monitoring of carrying capacities and visitor density and distribution, with longer term planning providing a vision for site sustainability. A sufficient EIA that would meet US and international standards would have considered these essential elements to sustainability and resource protection. In closing, it's not too late to support an enhanced level of cooperation amongst Disney, Bahamian government agencies, local communities, and NGOs for this project. We strongly encourage the redesign of this project that meets the new normal of sustainable tourism, more equitable economic benefits, and genuine destination stewardship. The world is watching. Disney Company has the opportunity and responsibility to develop a true sustainable tourism destination model that meets the highest international standards. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Miller. We greatly appreciate your important comments.
Thank you.
We would now like to open up the meeting for discussion. You can feel free to go to the reactions icon on the Zoom bottom toolbar, where there's an option to raise your hand, and then you can raise your hand to be able to ask any questions for the experts or comments you might have on the adequacy of Disney's environmental impact statement and its consideration of the economics, sustainability, and alternatives. And in the interest of giving everyone a chance to speak, we'll please limit your comments and questions to 2 minutes. You can also take a quick 30-second follow-up on the answer to your question. We're going to be focusing solely on the adequacy of Disney's environmental impact assessment. And we apologize in advance, but we do reserve the right to mute anyone whose comments are outside the scope of the meeting, abusive or otherwise inappropriate. And now for some comments, I'm going to open it up and see if anyone has their hands raised. looking. I don't see any hands raised yet.
I see, Mark, I see two.
Okay, right. James Lima.
Yeah.
Let me unmute. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hello, Mark. Good to see you.
Nice to see you, James.
Hi, my name is James Lima, and I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight and not on behalf of any organization. I was struck in the course of my recent past work on a plan for Lighthouse Point with a remarkable, talented, and committed team of Lutherans that, despite the many apparent differences in the many places we work throughout North America, despite differences of physical places, geographies, climates, cultures, customs, and economies, there are in fact far more common needs and desires that are grounded and shared in our aspiration for a decent quality of life for ourselves and our families. Tonight, I just want to speak briefly on two areas of economic concern for Luthra. And by the way, I completely want to be associated with the comments of the two previous speakers. We do similar work and have worked with CREST, and I'll talk a little bit about the economic analysis we did of our proposal, but it's clear that there are deficiencies here. Two areas of economic concern for Luthra that get at the island's enormous potential to create greater access to true economic opportunity and to what I think of as inclusive prosperity. One is around infrastructure and the other is cultural landscape. We're seeing an inspired generational plan at this moment in the United States to invest in the future by allocating significant resources to workforce training, education, innovation-focused economies, economic revitalization, capacity building at the local community level. The infrastructure Disney proposes is both damaging and economically absurd. A half-mile long, fixed in the water bridge to nowhere costing hundreds of millions of dollars is the most inelastic solution to a highly elastic problem, moving people from sea to land. A true generational game-changing investment in Eleuthera's future resilient economy would be to establish a world caliber research and innovation campus that establishes a hub of educational tourism, a place to live and learn, to build from the strengths of Eleuthera's natural beauty and its incredible people. We found that a plan centered around educational and ecotourism, stay over tourism, on a very small footprint of the site would generate 27 times greater economic benefit for the Bahamas than the proposed Disney plan and would create significantly more local jobs and year-round jobs. Second, to the point of cultural tourism, including deeply meaningful cultural landscapes are the foundation of resilient communities and of resilient economies. It's really disturbing to see that a harmful, hurtful, centuries-old legacy of colonialism appears to be the economic underpinning of this current cruise ship, day tripper, tourist resort proposal. A behemoth of corporate America, which specializes in artifice and stage sets, which can take a vast swamp and turn it into magic, is taking an already pristine place it doesn't need, violating a sacred place when it could go somewhere else to meet these needs. Rather, we would love to partner with Disney on something that is on brand, that is morally right, and that is honoring the cultural landscape, the cultural heritage, and the people of Eleuthera by aspiring to elevate to a place about environmental best practices, about using the incredible environment that is this place, this laboratory for research and innovation to create an educational economy around knowledge and discovery in partnership with world-class organizations so that people will come here from all over the world to live and learn and to employ locals in skills-based opportunities, but also new enduring career pathways. Thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you so much, James. Next in line was Jane DeMosto. I'll ask you to mute. Jane,
Hello, it won't unmute it won't show, it says it can't do my video.
we can hear you.
Yeah. And I don't have anything to say except I'm speaking from Venice in Italy, where we have exactly the same issues. And I know Sam Duncombe and Jacob Shev from the Global Cruise Activist Network. But I just wanted to ask what the time scale is for the decision, like if they've done their environmental impact assessment, what happens next? I didn't get a sense of that.
Thank you, Jane. Jacob, do you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, right now the environmental impact assessment was made public on March 10th, and there was an official public consultation held on April 8th last week, and we're in the middle of the comment period. Final comments are due at 5 p.m. on May 7th. And then after that, Disney will have 21 days to prepare a response to the comments. And at that point, the government will make a decision about whether or not additional work has to be done in order to provide an adequate environmental review. And the reason we're having this consultation and are planning this extended consultation is that we're really, really eager to try and gather as many views and voices on this very, very important decision. So thank you so much for keeping an eye on this from Venice, and and hopefully we can really open up a discussion with Disney, as James suggested, and really talk about innovative and transformative alternatives for this area.
All right, thank you, Jacob. And I'm going to turn over to the next person. And again, what I should have said at the beginning too is I will apologize in advance if I mispronounce or botch anyone's names. But next up I have is Kelly Arkles. Kelly, I'll ask you to unmute. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So one of the questions, I have many questions, but I'm going to keep myself to 2 minutes. One of the questions that I have is about public utilities. And then being a stayover tourist, one of the things that myself and my husband realized, we fell in love with Exuma, and then we fell in love with Eleuthera. And one of the things that we realized is that from a medical perspective, there's not good hospitals on these islands. Now, when you're introducing the amount of tourists into Eleuthera, as Disney is proposing, and there's no hospital in Eleuthera that can handle it, are they doing, my question is twofold. Are they doing anything to promote more utilities for the Eleutherans? And in that same case, obviously they're going to take care of their own guests, their cruise guests, but how are they going to help the South Eleutherans? If there's no hospital there, then how are the South Eleutherans going to really benefit from this? I mean, what are they proposing they're going to do for the Bahamians and especially the Eleutherans?
Thank you, Kelly. And those, I don't have the answers to those questions, but we will definitely we're recording these, and we'll be able to add those types of questions to comments coming out. I think they're very, very pertinent questions to be asking. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And next I want to call on Ben Simmons.
Hi there, how's it going, everybody? Thanks so much for hosting this. I've just sort of, I'm just sort of getting my beak wet in the whole sort of lighthouse debacle, mostly in response to our own cruise. I'm sorry, I should introduce myself. I own two small hotels in North Eleuthera, one in Harbor Island and one in just outside of Upper Bogue. They're very small, 12 rooms each. One's completely solar powered. The other's a sort of the last remaining Bahamian hotel on the Pink Sands beach. And really a strong believer in the idea that small is beautiful, and not only that, it's the key to a sustainable economy that employs more people, is better prepared to kind of deal with economic shocks and such forth. So I guess my curiosity in all of this, and sort of talking to some of the people down south, and seeing their eagerness to receive this this project, is that it's not necessarily new. I mean, Princess Key has been there for 12 plus years. South Eleuthera has the highest volume of visitors in all of Eleuthera, but none of the economic gain. In 2018 and 2019, there was close to 350,000 people that arrived in Princess Key. None of that trickle-down effect has passed on to the wider economy. And I guess the question for Disney, and I don't know if it's addressed in the EIA, is what are they doing differently? Why is this going to work when Princess Key hasn't delivered the wealth and breadth of to that area? So that's sort of the question that I had, and I don't know if you guys have the answer to that. Secondly, I'd love to share, we recently did a survey of visitors in North Eleuthera, and just to kind of give I'll stop there, and maybe if you know the answers to that, or if anybody does.
I think we can see if any of our earlier speakers do have any responses to those, but I think most of the questions, even including what Kelly was asking for, were not in the environmental impact assessment. And so we certainly encourage you to ask those questions during the comment period, which is until May 7th.
Okay.
Anybody have any answers to Ben's questions? No. Okay. Thank you, Ben. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, so just wanted to share, like, I mean, James brought up great points about alternatives to this economic model of just more, and more doesn't necessarily equate into quality or sustainability, and we sort of have seen this up north when Harbor Island has sort of curated this low density, it's density that's a lot lower than what Disney's proposing, and it's on average there's about 60,000 people per year that visit Harbor Island in North Eleuthera. They generate around $270 million over the course of the year in just consumer spending. That's nearly $1 billion every 5 years. What Disney is proposing just seems like pennies, cents on the dollar for the environmental damage that they're going to do. Put another way, sort of breaking down the numbers, 1,777 Harbor Island style clients per year would deliver the same economic output that Disney's proposing with 1 million cruise guests. And that's without like geoengineering 60% of their coastline. So it's shocking to me that the numbers that we're talking about are not, they're really not a lot for what they're doing. Anyway, those are just some very simple observations. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I hope that helps the conversation, and I will, yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I just wanted to point out for you and for Kelly and for the rest of those folks that are going to be asking questions and comments is that Phoebe Shaw just put into the chat feature information about the public comments being due on May 7th. So where you can submit your comments and questions, these great questions and comments that you're all raising. Please submit them, and we also will be planning to submit a recording of this session as part of our comments as well. I'd like to next call on Crystal Kingston. I think it's Anderson, but it's cut off on the screen. But Crystal Kingston Anderson.
Unmute me.
You are.
Oh, okay, good. All righty. All right. Well, let me tell a little about myself first before I start talking. I live in Deep Creek, very close to Lighthouse Point. My husband and I, my husband's Bahamian. We have a tour business. We take guests out to Lighthouse Beach prior to COVID. We take guests out probably, we're out there probably 4 to 6 days a week. We take guests from Princess Keys also. So we're very familiar with the cruise ship side of the industry, and we do the cruises ourselves. Okay, so I know what the cruise ships want to charge, because Princess wanted 80%. If we did tours through Princess, they wanted 80%. All right, but we do it on our own using TripAdvisor. All right, I know that when these people come from the Disney cruise ship, nobody's going to go beyond the port for probably the first 10 years because Disney's a very expensive cruise ship. Okay, everyone's going to want to stay at Lighthouse Beach the first time to see what Lighthouse is about. Okay, maybe by the second cruise, they might venture beyond. However, how often does somebody do 2 Disney cruises? Their kids grow up, it's very expensive. They do another cruise on a different ship somewhere else, or they take the Disney cruise ship to a different location because I know when I go on cruises, I want to see different ports each time. So anyhow, that being said, I really don't see any economic spread for a long time, if any, beyond the port. Right now, we're kind of all just preaching to the choir. I want to know what we can do other than that email to the DEPP or whatever they're called. What else can we do to get the word out there? And is there anybody that we can task with doing this? You know, I mean, when I say what can we do, you know, who can we contact news media? Is there someone else in the Bahamian government? Is there, what else can we do? We can all talk together, but what else can we do?
Right. That's well, very good question. And there is a need for getting greater awareness out this. There is, you know, as we know, we've got nearly 500,000 people filing the petition or signing our petition. So it is the world is watching this, and there is a greater need though to keep the pressure on to make sure that a responsible, sustainable decision is made here, and help getting out the word to media and other and telling everyone. We've been one of the most popular petitions on that site, and so we want to keep on spreading the word. You're absolutely right.
But can we task specific people to do this so it doesn't say, okay, well, I thought you were doing it. I thought you were doing it. Can we make a list of who all we should be contacting? Can we organize this better so that it gets tackled appropriately and designate to people, okay, we need people to go to CNN. We need people to go to BBC. We need people to go hear that. We need to organize it better so that it gets accomplished and that we get a more thorough list.
Yeah. Jacob, do you want to respond?
I would just add, you know, please, you know, get in touch with us if you have ideas, particularly about raising the profile of this issue in the American media. You know, I think, you know, part of our goal here is, you know, we see this issue as one that obviously extraordinarily important in the Bahamas, but it really is also about the responsibility of a major American corporation. And so, you know, so I would just suggest, you know, if you're capable of doing more, you know, please put your name in the chat. We'll get in touch with you. Give us your email, and or go up to our website, www.stopdisney.com. You can leave your email there, and you know, this is the time to get as many people to sign that petition, and also to basically and we really want to submit as many comments as possible, because I think we have to make it really clear to Disney that they can do a lot better in the Bahamas than they have.
Okay, yeah, I'm very interested, and I know Kelly and myself and another person created the original Lighthouse Point. Gosh, what was it, Kelly? Lighthouse Point Protection Coalition Facebook page and website. When this first started happening, way back when, she did the website. It's a great website with a lot of resources in it. So we're very interested in helping see what we can do from our end. Just today, I got elected to be secretary for the Global Sustainable Tourism Council for Eleuthera. So that's definitely a thing that I'm very interested in, the GSTC. We've got some good efforts going on there to get that going. So this does not fit that at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Crystal, and we will be looking forward to connecting with you and appreciate all your work, and thank you so much. I'm going to call on Liz Barrett Brown.
Hi, Mark. Thank you, first of all, for being involved in this really important issue. It's just terrific that the Waterkeepers is engaged. So thank you so much. And to Jacob and Phoebe and others who have been working more recently, and to Crystal and others who have been working more for many more years on this. It's such an important issue. We have a small apartment on Windermere Island in Eleuthera, and have been going for, I would say, about 20 years, and love Lighthouse Point, and just hope that there is an galvanizing of people around this issue at this point, so that we can do some of the things that Dinah and Crest are suggesting we get Disney to do. I wanted to ask a question of Dinah to say, is there any provision for a supplemental EIS within the Bahamian system? When talking about alternatives, do they need to consider the alternatives that have been put forward over many years that are much more sustainable? And it would also be great to hear from somebody, maybe Jacob, about the alternatives that have been put forward, how they compare to the Disney, proposal. I think Ben's comments about how low impact Harbor Islands tourism is, yet it generates billions of dollars, is just such an incredible contrast with what Disney is proposing. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, but thank you all so much for doing this hearing tonight. And I hope that this gets wide circulation after this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Dinah, do you want to start?
Sure. So the Bahamian EIA procedures that I looked at, which were published in September of 2020, are, I think it would be fair to say, skeletal, very, very bare bones. The only thing it really says about alternatives is it does reference the need for the no action alternative, which this EIA does not include, and description of alternatives, other alternatives considered. And I think Disney is making this pitch that they considered alternatives in the privacy of their corporate boardroom. And then, as Greg pointed out, also referenced an alternative that it wasn't even one of theirs. In terms of a supplemental EIS, there doesn't seem to be a particular provision for that, unfortunately, but there's no prohibition against it. And clearly, normally, there would be, a provision for that. So, again, the Bahamian EIA is really very, very bare bones. That doesn't mean that Disney couldn't go beyond that, and the Bahamian government for that matter. Frankly, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a supplement. I mean, it really needs a whole revision. There's very little of it that should stand the way it is.
Thank you, Dinah. And Jacob, did you have anything you wanted to add to Liz's questions?
All I'd say, Liz, is that Disney has made it clear that they are willing to go beyond legal requirements in countries that they operate. And as Mark pointed out before, they've stated that they're going to follow the same level of environmental stewardship here as they would for their projects everywhere else. So, and so I think that, first of all, I can kind of go beyond what's required. And then secondly, Rochelle Newbold said clearly last week on behalf of the Bahamian government that if they identified major gaps and omissions in the report, that they could require that and require Disney to do additional work before further consideration of the approval of the project. And so I think, so we're at this stage, I think there's still, we hope that both Disney and the government will take these the comments that heard last week and what we're generating tonight seriously, and will commit to withdrawing their current EIA and doing additional studies and analyses and submitting a new EIA to further public review.
Thank you, Jacob. Liz, do you have any follow-up to that, or shall I move on?
Yeah, just maybe a brief description of alternatives that have been proposed in the past. I know that there was a robust effort to bring people together in South Eleuthera to come up with a sustainable plan, and that Disney chose a site right on top of that, which is so disheartening because it's one of the most beautiful models that I have looked at in terms of sustainable tourism and development. I'm sure many on this call were involved in that, and so it's incredibly disheartening that the buyer was Disney and they came in and just completely ignored, not worse than ignored. I mean, it's preposterous to me to think of like buses running along the pier. I don't know, that just that image, having been there to this place, which is a sacred place, so incredibly beautiful, and to think of a pier with buses running because people can't even walk the length of the pier is incredible. So it's, completely like a nightmare. And so, I'd love to hear from somebody about what has been proposed and whether, how we get Disney to think seriously about whether this is something they could do as a legacy that's completely opposed to what they're proposing now.
Dinah or Jacob, do you have a brief response to that before we move on to another request or question?
I'm going to defer to Jacob on that. I think he's much more knowledgeable than I am about
Yeah,
that.
well, let me just say, I mean, James Lima knows very well what the discussion was in 2008. And there was a proposal put forward to the government for a lower impact, lower density, land-based alternative, which would involve a national park, a research facility, and an ecotourism lodge. And more recently, Chris Maxey, the Island School, sent a letter to a public letter to Bob Chapek, the CEO of Disney, asking to sit down with Disney to talk about sort of a similar sort of proposal. I think that's in line with what Greg has said. And so that's what we're talking about. I mean, there's at this point, part of it is the obligation of Disney and the government to look at another alternative. And I think if they're open to that, which they haven't been to this stage, then I don't think we're gonna have a problem coming up with something really good for them to take into consideration. Okay.
Thank you, Jacob. I'd like to move on to Colette Butterfield.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, my name is Colette Butterfield, and I am not a Saudi Lutheran, but I am a Bahamian. And I wanted to comment based on a lot of, feedback based on this EIA that I've been getting or I've been seeing from my own people, The reality is, even though this project is proposed in Saudi Lutheran, it is in fact everybody's business, okay? Somebody asked the question, what could we do to make locals more aware? And the reality is, they have a prime example of what could happen. Due to global warming, we just had a major hurricane in Abaco, and everybody had to help. It was everybody's business. People from all around the world and all around the country had to get on board and help. So when something happens, it would be everybody's business, from Northern Lutheran to Saudi Lutheran to all around the world. So I think that we need to acknowledge the fact that it is everybody's business. And I just wanted to make that comment to my people as a Bahamian.
Wonderful comment, Colette. Thank you very much. And I want to just thank all the wonderful people who have been putting their names and information in the chat so that we can be in contact about things to work on together. And make one more reminder that we only have until May 7th to get comments in. I think I'll ask Phoebe if she can even put it in there one more time, or even a couple more times as we go along, to where to submit comments, just so we're continually reminding people. And I have David Salzillo next.
Hello. I'll be very brief. Harping on Crystal's question, did President Biden express any view on this Disney project? And if not, would it be prudent to drum up national attention to get his view on it?
To my knowledge, he has not, but maybe Jacob, you might.
I think it's an interesting point. I think, once again, there is an American nexus here, but to our knowledge, there's no American governmental connection, either in terms of a regulation or loans or financing that would really put the United States government into position to really say something about this project. And I think honestly, I think really we really need to try and get the attention of the people at the highest levels of Disney, and to sort of make them understand that, people expect them to do better in the Bahamas, and and to do better in being and really showing the world and showing some real leadership in addressing the environmental challenges and the human challenges in Eleuthera.
Thank you, Jacob. Could I call on Marcy Keever, please? Oh, I have to mute you. There you go. Are you there, Marcy?
Thank you. Yes, thanks for unmuting me. I appreciate the chance to speak. I direct the Oceans and Vessels program at Friends of the U.S., Friends of the Earth U.S., and we're really, really happy to join this effort to try and protect Lighthouse Point from Disney's push to develop. We issue a semi-annual cruise ship report card, and Disney Cruise Line had risen to the top of our report card in the past several years due to their improvements of the 4 cruise ships that they own. However, when we were informed that Disney was pushing the Lighthouse Point development last year, we made the decision to reduce Disney's A- grade down to a B- due to their push to develop here. It's clear to us, having taken a very quick look, that this is a pristine place that should not be developed, and that the cruise industry has so many other options, and already owns islands all over the Caribbean where they take folks. There are better places for this if that's what folks want to do, but Lighthouse Point is not the place. We've reviewed the EIA. There's a significant number of things missing, especially the significant impacts of bringing large cruise ships into this area. How many cruise ships are planned? What is the plan to expand if they do develop? What will this mean on a weekly and annual basis for the region? They're planning 2 new large ships for their fleet. So what is the future going to bring? And then there's nothing in the EIA about the impacts of the massive number of people on these large ships. What is going to be the impact to water quality and the marine environment of the area, the impacts of cruise ship wastewater, other toxic discharges, impacts on the water quality and clarity in the region. I have a recent study that shows significant impacts from the cruise ships that have had on Key West in Florida, and the documented improvement in water clarity while cruising has been on hold due to COVID. And all of these issues need to be reviewed in a legitimate environmental impact assessment before, or at least we believe, before the government and the Bahamas should make any decisions about the Lighthouse Point development. And we're going to be, working with our members and activists to get that, those questions into the Bahamian government by the comment deadline. So we really appreciate everyone's work here and are happy to continue to work to protect Lighthouse Point.
Thank you, Marcy, and we are thrilled to have Friends of the Earth joining us, and we're grateful for your comments. Thank you so much. I want to just note that it's 7:01, and we do have a few more people that have their hands up. We will be able to stay here until 7:15, and so all of you who can stay, please, we welcome you. And also just want to note there was a question from Crystal in the chat about whether Gregory Miller's wonderful slides would be available, and Phoebe has put them into the chat. So Crystal and anyone else who is interested in the slides can access them on the chat. Next, I want to call on C. Brown.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. And thanks for taking my call. I'm a 5-time Olympian, Olympic gold medalist, and I represent Eleuthera to the core. Born and raised in Wimson's Bight, and I've just been informed of what's going on. I haven't been following the story and what's been going on with the Disney project. I've heard 1 or 2 rumors about it, but I haven't been really in depth of what's going on. But based upon the knowledge that I've heard so far, I'm willing and able to help out in any situation that you need me to. I think it's always good when you have a son of the soil and also Olympian involved. So wherever I can lend my support, you can definitely count on me to be a part of the project, and I'm willing and on standby.
Great. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Is this the fireman?
It sure is. Yes, sir. Live and living colors.
All right. We will look forward to your help. Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you. We appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. I'm kind of shocked that you guys haven't reached out earlier to try to, to get me involved or find out what's going on with me. I'm available. I'm right here. I'm not far. You can always reach me at any time. I pick up my phone, check my emails on a regular, and so like I said, I'm available.
Fantastic. Do we know how? I guess someone maybe knows how to reach you.
Yes. Miss as a leader, she knows how to reach me. You can get in contact with her, and she'll give you all my contact information details.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Srila Pradhan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. I had a question really, rather than a comment, and that is that, one thing I've noticed in comments in general about this project and the resistance to it is that a lot of the signatures and people wanting to prevent it are not from Eleuthera. So what I wanted to know is, what do people in Eleuthera feel? Do they want Disney to do this? Do they believe it's going to help them? Maybe, I'm sure erroneously, obviously, but because there are a lot of comments online about people who have second homes in Eleuthera trying to prevent this, whereas other people whose primary home is in Eleuthera do want this, and even if it's erroneous, they think it will help them. So if it seems like people from the outside are trying to prevent a project in Eleuthera, that's a bad look. So I'm wondering, how can that be changed, or what can be done about that?
Jacob, do you want to take that?
Kasarina, could you answer that? Is Kasarina on the phone?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Katarina McKinney. I am born and raised on Eleuthera, and I think it's been brought up several times, but this really is a project that affects all of us. There are a lot of people on Eleuthera who care deeply about Lighthouse Point and who want to see an alternative development strategy for this really iconic place. And I think there's a false narrative that's being perpetuated that it is a massive cruise terminal at Lighthouse Point or nothing at all. And that is certainly not what we're advocating for. We would like to see jobs. We would like to see development. We would like to see a sustainable development alternative that really sustains communities and sustains the economy of Eleuthera and South Eleuthera especially. So I think there are a lot of people from Eleuthera who care deeply, and I'm really happy to hear from Fireman Brown and many others who are speaking out. So thank you all.
Thank you, Kasharina. Srila, did you have any follow-up on that? I'm sorry, I just muted her. Sorry, Srila, you're up. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's helpful. That's what I was looking for. I mean, this is just a comment really, but if Disney's perspective, I think, and I might be wrong, but my sense is that we can propose different things to them, but from their branding perspective, they have a certain demographic of passengers and consumers, and their consumers are not necessarily the high-end type of Harbor Island consumer or necessarily the eco-lodge type. So they might be looking at it as, well, this is our property and we can do with it what we want to our branding, consistent with our branding. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I think we have one more person with their hand up, which is Kevin Degenhardt. Kevin, are you still there? Kevin?
Yeah, hi, is that unmuted now?
You are unmuted, yes.
Excellent. First of all, tremendous thanks to all the presenters and condensing something that's so complex into those shorter statements, which made total sense to me. And I've learned more tonight than I have over the last several months of lobbying online about this particular issue. I lived in Nassau for 4 years, between 2004 and 2008. I came back to the UK where it's snowing 3 days ago, so I do get to Eleuthera as often as I can. It is one of our favourite places, Tarpon Bay in particular. And we like to think we're one of those tourists who comes back. We use local transport, local airlines, we hire a local car, we use all the local bars, restaurants, hotels, and local boarding and local stores. We've been down to Lighthouse Point a couple of times. And I think it's one of the most wonderful places on this planet. We're extensively traveled. And I love the remark that was made earlier about Disney is violating a sacred place. And I love the other comment from the gentleman from North Eleuthera, I think Upper Bogue, he said, and about small is beautiful. And that's where I'm coming from on this. But I'm also sort of a naturalist and wildlife conservationist. And while I realized that it would be great to invest more in finance for local people on Eleuthera, 100% behind that, but do it in a sensitive and balanced way, I was wondering, having looked at a lot of arguments online and been in touch with Sam Duncan and others, how strong the science is that counters Disney's EIA in relation to conservation of species and physical environmental impact on reefs and structures. And I'm disappointed, having written both the letters and emails to the Bahamian government and just been ignored over the last year and got exactly the same response from Disney. So what makes us think anything's going to change?
Solid question. I'm first of all glad to have you here tonight, and thank you for. Glad to hear that you found it very enlightening to hear from these wonderful experts and all of the different people who have been here asking really good questions and providing wonderful comments. Jacob, did you have any response to the question?
Well, I think what I would, let me just suggest, I think, first of all, Sam's going to mention this. We're going to do another session next on Earth Day on April 22nd, and we're going to be looking at the marine environment and climate change, and we'll be getting more into some detail about the sort of lack of good science, and in some cases, the lack of real studies to look at issues like sea turtles and bonefish. And I would encourage you to, I would encourage you to keep checking back at www.stopdisney.com, because we'll continue to put up more materials as we get more analyses from independent experts.
Thank you, Jacob. And thank you again, Kevin. Is there, I guess, Helen Roosevelt, I think you are our last one, and then I'll ask Sam Duncan to close it out after that. So Helen, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thank you. So I was an island school participant in 2015, and I was able to go on Lighthouse Point and sleep on Lighthouse Beach, and it was amazing. But my question is, I know you mentioned Chris Maxey, but is anyone trying to get the island school involved? Because I feel like we have a very giant alum base that we could have a lot of power, but I'm not sure if anyone is technically utilizing that power per se.
Yeah, we visited with Chris Maxey when we were at Lighthouse Point last year, but I know Jacob and some others have been in more regular contact with Chris, so I'll defer to either Jacob or Kasharina or one of our other partners.
Yeah, let me just, we have been talking to, we've been talking to Chris, and we see Chris in the Island School, and the alumni is clearly a group of people that have a real appreciation of the significance of this place and a real stake in making sure that it's preserved. And I see Chris and the Island School as playing potentially a really important role in sitting down with Disney and other local groups and other experts to really develop a land-based, more sustainable alternative. But please send us your name in the chat, give us your email, and we can be in touch with you, because I think the key now, and this goes, is that we really need now over the next 2 or 3 weeks to really raise the visibility of this issue. You know, it'd be great if we could get to 500,000 on the change.org petition. It'd be great if we can really alert people to say this is really truly our last chance to save Lighthouse Point, and to really get people to engage in this issue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Helen. I'm going to turn it over to my good friend, Sam. Sam, you there?
Mute. Okay, sorry about that. We're sorry for anybody who didn't get to ask their question today, but please put it in the chat. We thank you all for joining the meeting and engaging in this important issue. If you didn't get a chance to speak tonight, we're going to be hosting another meeting next week on Earth Day, April 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Our discussion is going to focus on change in the marine environment, and the Zoom information has been dropped into the chat. Once again, this is major for the future of Eleuthera and the Bahamas. At issue is the responsibility of major multinational and small islands to live up to their commitments to protect our shared environment for future generations. We hope to see you next week to continue this important conversation. And again, thank you so much for.
Thank you, everyone.